Hello and welcome back for another episode of Indie Impressions. Today I'm very pleased to be able to show you an amazing game called Vessel. This one's a kind of a big deal. I mean, a lot of times we look at sort of smaller, out-of-the-way sort of indie games that definitely are interesting, but a lot of times they're not, like, groundbreaking, and I say that really carefully because I know some of the games, I should say, are actually somewhat groundbreaking. They just need a little bit more exposure and a little bit of a push, and sometimes a little bit more polish. This game, however, I think falls squarely within the realm of, like, the big few that have shown up on the scene in the last bunch of years, and I'm thinking particularly of Limbo, Braid, Super Meat Boy, and maybe more recently Fez. This is one of those types of games that you really should be taking careful attention of. It's a fluid physics action platformer with some really great music, art design, and really clever puzzles. And it's one of the few games that in my time just sort of messing around with it to get accustomed with it, I couldn't stop playing it, and I had to pretty much just pull myself away to be able to record this. So we're going to start a new game. There's a very brief, as often is the case, little introduction. I'm not going to let this episode be cut too short because I think that it's important to see some of the sort of evolving conventions as the game goes on. I'm just going to let this start and I'll keep talking because you can just watch. This is the sort of game where if you don't have the experience of seeing how it increases in scope, I don't think you'll get the right idea from it. And I starting it, had no idea what to expect. I mean, as is the case with every game when you start it, but this one more so just because I knew it was a fluid physics sort of puzzle game, but I actually didn't even know that you would be playing as a character throughout it. I sort of thought it was just like a room-based point-and-click type thing. So I was very happy to find that I was wrong, and you actually take the role of a scientist character who has developed these little creatures that are made out of fluid, and they act to basically facilitate the majority of the puzzles in the game. And as the whole story progresses, you end up with more and more different ways to interact with the puzzles, and obviously the puzzles can increase in complexity. But beyond just the puzzles, there's actually a great adventure element to it as well, which I wasn't expecting really that much. So I was pretty much pleasantly surprised on all fronts, not only with just the adventuring, the story, but the art design, the music design, everything is really well in place. And the art design reminds me of a really interesting hybrid. It gives me a little bit of like Limbo plus Braid plus Shadow Complex, which I suppose is probably the 2D, 3D hybrid situation, since we're dealing with polygonal characters on a somewhat flat background, even though most of this is also modeled as well. So you've got a journal that you can check for, that's going to give you little clues as to how the story is progressing. You'll see right away you don't miss a beat, you already get some fluid physics to deal with. Now, I was a little bit confused with the physics at first to this, they look a little bit like jelly. But to be honest, it's actually probably better that way because it gives you a little bit better of a idea of the mass of the liquid. And as you'll see when it becomes necessary to deal with it, if this was a more viscous solution, I don't think that it would actually work as well. But we're going to do a little bit of running here, and then we're going to start up with the switches. Don't be put off by the sheer amount of switches, because things do start to change up as the game progresses. I was thinking at first maybe this is sort of like a one-trick pony, we're just going to be dealing with the same sort of stuff for a long time. And I was also met with some weird stuff like running in these barrels and having it run with me. I thought was kind of strange. That's just a little awkward, but, you know, whatever, it's not a big deal. This is just the beginning anyway, we're just getting accustomed to moving around as our character, and the game does an excellent job of tutorializing how everything works. So you can see the sense of weight and mass as these particles move around in space, and they actually do accumulate and then dissipate. I'm going to try not to dwell on it too much, though. You can see that actually your character has enough mass that it'll cause the fluid to build up around him, which is always a nice touch. One place it did get a little awkward, though, is when I jumped into a body of water, or fluid, I should say, because I'm not always sure that this is even water, necessarily. The character, he didn't get submersed in the liquid, he actually just sort of made an indentation in it, which was a little weird. But hopefully if we can go at a decent clip, I'll actually get to show you that part. I mean, honestly, this is the type of game that I would be pretty comfortable just doing a Let's Play of, because I had a really fun time just playing around with it. And the puzzles were intelligent enough that I never felt like I was sort of just along for the ride, you know? A lot of games can feel like that, you just sort of are solving everything just to move forward. I mean, of course the ones at the beginning felt a little bit more like that, but as we got maybe 20 minutes into the game, I already started to feel like I wasn't having my hand held as much, things were just starting to make a little bit more sense, and I was naturally progressing as a player, learning the conventions of the game without a lot of extra hand-holding. So, yeah, there's a lot of switches and turning stuff, but you know, he's a scientist, it's a mechanical age, I get the idea of anyway. And the other important thing to note is this is one of the games that definitely is best played with a 360 controller. I guess you could use mouse and keyboard for it, but I feel like that would be sort of the inferior way to control the game. A lot of these cues are actually, like you can see the X right there on that switch, prompting me to actually hold the X button on my controller. And the controls are incredibly intuitive, actually, so yeah, definitely recommend it if you can. Play this with a controller. Graphics are very polished, everything comes across really nice, the animations are quite smooth, and there's some really nice attention to detail on that. There's a few... Specifically, there's a spot where you're like running along on a zip line, and I thought it was a really nice touch that when the player's legs come in contact with a ground area, that he'll actually run along with it, sort of like what you sort of see in the Assassin's Creed series, how Altair or whoever you're playing as happens to come in contact with a wall. The character is sort of like enabled with the ability to recognize a surface is near him, and I really appreciate that little touch. So your fluid guys here, they actually respond to switches and light, and you'll see right here this wall is stuck. So I'm not able to progress. I'm going to have to do something about the fact that he's standing on that switch. Well, thankfully, I'm a reasonably intelligent guy, and I realized that this is a type of lever that you can manipulate left and right, so I'm going to position this right over him. And don't worry, this is entirely humane. And that should solve that problem. Another thing that I sort of noticed in sort of a reference sense was I got a little bit of a Little Big Planet vibe, maybe more specifically Little Big Planet 2, just because the way that the levers and switches feel sort of feels a little similar to that. And I suppose some of these puzzles might be an interesting thing to try and recreate, actually, in that game. So we've got these flip levers here. Those are not a huge deal. You sort of are quickly taught that you can bump into them to turn them over. We have that lever that I just turned the light off. And now paying attention to what's under me here, we've got a lever that's going to go open. This one is fine, and this one we want to switch and then switch back. And just force of habit, I'm hitting all of those switches. The climbing animation's a little weird, but again, not a huge deal. I mean, there's a couple little nitpicks I can make, but this isn't the type of game. When you start to see the progression of this, nitpicking this game is really sort of petty and stupid. It's really not the sort of game that needs to be worried about like that. It's very entertaining. Alright, so we're setting up a potential crusher situation here. My guy is thankfully pretty durable, though. You'll see he takes a hammer, a spiked hammer on the chin, like a pro. He doesn't even mind. Mass production. Alright, so this is where we're going to start to deal with machinery. So we're going to... Oh, you're right, they're called Fluros. I kind of glossed over a lot of these pages, which I probably shouldn't do. So there's a turbine. We're going to be able to start creating fluoros who are going to help us manipulate switches. In this case, this lever or turbine, switch, whatever the hell you want to call it, you hold X and you rotate the left analog stick in the direction you want it to progress in. You'll see the water is slowly filling up this tank at the bottom here, and that means that we're going to be charged to create a fluoro once the switch popped up and lit up, which it did. So we press. This guy's going to spin for a minute, and our fluid friend will emerge. And he's got a lot of initiative, so he's going to immediately jump his way up to that lit up switch in the top right corner. And that will open our way forward. Okay, so here's another example of our fluoro helping us out. We've got this lit up switch here. That's going to pull him ahead. And this one I should be able to rotate on my own. So these guys are pretty brain dead as far as like their cognizance of the world. They basically respond to binary instructions, on-off switches for the most part, which is where a lot of the puzzles come in. So in this case, we're actually going to use a fluoro to manipulate this turbine in the middle, which is going to open up this gear at the bottom. Now, the way that you do this isn't incredibly obvious at first, but once you understand what you're trying to do, it actually becomes obvious. So since we get now that these guys respond to these switch lights, we're going to send him across the way, and we can guide him through the room. So what you'll notice here is when he reaches this end here, we haven't actually manipulated this turbine at all. So we're going to hit this one again. He's going to go directly to that other switch, thereby causing him to move that with his fluid weight. So if we were incredibly dumb, we would actually just hit this switch again, send him back in the other direction, and this gear at the bottom would close back up, and we would be making no progress. Since we are not incredibly dumb, however, we're going to send him on the same path a second time, which will result in us clearing our way again. So this is a really smart way of tutorializing some of the very basic functions of how we need to manipulate our fluoros to move forward. And again, I want to stress this isn't all about one type of puzzle. This does open up in breadth and scope, so stay tuned as we go forward. Things will just get more interesting. So this is the part I was talking about with the zipline-esque situation. A very kind of sweeping introduction, cinematic sort of moment. And we get to take a little guided tour of some caverns, kick some fluoros in the head, and sort of feel like Batman on his way to his Batcave, which is always a nice feeling. Definitely love the lighting effect going on here, and the sense of depth, and that's what I was talking about, how he's sort of aware of the ground beneath him. Just really nice little details like that go a long way. Alright, what will we do with this one again? I'm not remembering. So we've got to make our way through this. He wants to get that button because obviously when this toggles, the other one lights up. So what we've learned about these guys is the best way to get them not to hit a switch is to destroy them. In this case, another fluoro will very quickly take his place, since we noticed them coming in the caves as we were going. But I think I'm a little too quick for you. And we move on. Now, of course, I have to run a careful balance here because I was going to say the majesty of these sort of puzzle games is the fact that you need to figure out the puzzles, so I don't want to spoil too much of the game either, but I do want to show you enough to get a good idea of what this game's about. And I think hopefully already you should get the sense that there's more to it than just hitting switches. And things will take a very Mario Sunshine twist as we go further on. I was a little curious what would happen if I tried to jump off in a few spots here. Maybe I'll save that for another day, though. because there are definitely a few spots where I could have easily jumped my way into a few of those corridors. Alright, so that seems like the end of the track, which is fine. Alright, so we've got another mechanical situation here. This guy, rather, as a scientist, I feel he takes some rather unintuitive measures to create his mechanisms, but that's fine. It makes things more entertaining for us anyway. So by rotating that wheel, that's going to result in filling that vessel up with water, where we can then create another fluoro. And our end goal here is to have the water spout in such a way that it will hit that green switch in the top left corner. And in order to do that, we need to move all of these platforms out of the way. Obviously, we're going to need a few friends to help us with that, because I don't have the ability to be in 4 to 5 places at once. So this is really, again, tutorializing how to deal with creating these guys, and how to deal with the puzzles that may result. So we're going to be thorough about this. We're just going to make 4 of them, why not? Hopefully I don't crush them by accident in my wild flailing. Did I not hit the button there? What happened? Oh. Well, that's a bit of a shame. And thankfully we're not going to be bound by this mechanism for the entire game. That would get a little tedious. But I'm not going to say exactly how and why, although maybe I kind of already did. Whoa. Don't hit me, bro. Okay, well, it gave him a nice haircut, I guess. Alright, I'm making this much more difficult than I need to be by smacking them and reducing my progress. Alright, we're at 3. Just one more, and then I'll get out of the way and let them finish their duties. No, hit the button. There you go. Now, I'm not sure that there's really a stopping point. I could probably just keep making these guys as long as I want. And that's fine. So he's going to find his way, and we're going to hold down on this water thingy here, and that will open that door for us. Alright, we've reached an elevator. Let's head up. See some more fluoro friends hanging out in this cave. Some more lovely liquid physics. I can block this up. I can dam it up with my body. That's just how I roll. And I believe this is getting close to the part I was talking about before. I can jump in a big body of water. What do I do here? Let's see. Okay, let's look around. We've got an X prompt on this little hose thing over here. And we've got an arrow pointing down, so let's do the math here and put these things together. So as with any good puzzle game, a lot of the enjoyment comes from the sense of satisfaction and discovery of figuring out exactly how to interact with things, and it does a wonderful job of building upon that. You know, it starts small, gets bigger, gets more exciting. And then we introduce new elements, introduce some more exploration, we introduce new tools and things, different upgrades. It gets pretty complex, but always in a good way. At least has been my experience so far in the time I've spent with it. So we're again building on what we just did. This is a little bit more of a complex puzzle. I think this might be the last one we're going to spend time with, just because we're approaching a longish video, maybe longer than I wanted it to be, but still, again, it's really important that you see what this game's about, because you're going to want to go get it. So, the deal with these things, again, we're going to try and charm these fluoros into pressing some buttons for us to open our way. I haven't been entirely transparent with my path here, but that goal over on the right is where we're trying to go. And this nozzle, or whatever you want to call it, is thankfully enabled. Oh crap, I think I just messed myself up there. Totally did. It's enabled to be grabbed from the top and the bottom, so once we get through this, I can actually keep going at the puzzle from above. You'll see what I mean in a second. Alright, that's that. I think I'm fine to just make another dude. Let's drop off some more water over here. Pop that switch. And then let's get out of the way so we don't destroy him again. There we go. So we actually need this to go in both directions, that's why we had to have him hit the lever twice. Then we're going to do a pretty similar thing over on the other side. And he's going to make our way open again. As long as I don't do this too slowly. Alright. And that will do it. Okay, we're through. These did take me a couple minutes to figure out at first. Yeah, so that's what I was talking about. He leaves a very strange shaped gap, but I guess that's just the way the collision's gotta work. But aside from that though, I mean the splashing and the individual particle physics to it, I mean look how it goes when it hits over the edge on the left. It all sort of breaks apart in a really interesting way. It's always fun to play with these sort of physics models, just see what happens with them. So that is another chapter. We've got some more switches and junk here. Okay, this is, yeah, things are going to start getting a bit more complex at this point, and we're going to get something called a seed, which is going to actually allow us to move our fluoro friends around without having to generate them from a machine. And you'll get more and more self-sufficient, so more goodies. So yeah, that's a, I think a decent introduction to Vessel, and I hope that you guys enjoyed looking at it as much as I enjoyed playing it, which is a ton. And I'm going to highly encourage you guys to go get it. It's on Steam. I think it deserves a lot more press than it's been getting. So if you guys can do your part and contribute, I think we deserve, or they deserve, to have a lot more credit given to them. So do your part, help indie games succeed. This is the exact sort of game that we need more of. Throw some encouragement out there, okay? Show some love. So, as with the way I wrap up every episode, make sure you head on over to facebook.com/indieimpressions. And I will head back out to the main menu here. And feel free to leave comments. I post every night's video over there on the Facebook page. Also, feel free to add me up on Twitter. I'm at IndieImpression or at RockLeeSmile. Send some suggestions, send some love, send some questions, whatever you want to do. I'll be there. I'll answer them real quick. And I do this show every day. I love to hear from you. So whatever you got to say, leave them a comment, leave whatever you want to do. But without interaction from you guys, I can't imagine it's going to go on forever. So I definitely need everybody to chip in every way they can. I'm not even asking for money, just say hi. But thank you again for watching. I will be back again tomorrow with another episode, and I will see you then. Have a wonderful night.